is you got a whole generation of people growing up with that, like, that's second nature to them.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was laughing earlier and being a curmudgeon about it, and then I'm realizing, like, wait, I'm old.
Yeah.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news.
I mean, don't worry about that. I mean, I got shown up by a 12-year-old on a UR program. Literally, she just took the template away from me and said, no, you do this. I'm like, oh, dang. I've been programming robots for longer than you've been alive.
Now available from FMA are 2 comprehensive industry-related surveys for 2023. The Salary, Wage, and Benefit Survey for intel to help company owners and HR managers, as well as the Financial Ratios and Operational Benchmarking Survey for crucial business performance data. Visit fmamfg.org to download both annual surveys.
Welcome to the Fabricator Podcast, where we have blown up letters on the screen so I can read them more easily. I'm joined by my host, co-host, Lincoln Bruner.
How do?
You might know him from the Fabricator and such titles as the Tube and Pipe Journal. Today, our guest will be Aaron Prather, Director for the Robotics and Autonomous Systems Program at ASTM International. We'll be chatting about his take on robotics and manufacturing, as well as some of the stuff he saw at FabTech. Mm-hmm. But I would like to invite you to enjoy a look at our new setting.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Thank you to all the people to help contribute to this. Wayfair.
Wayfair and Easy Canvas.
Easy Canvas.
The DeVito brothers with the table.
Yes, we should give a shout out.
Yeah.
To Rob and Anthony of IR Custom for this excellent table, which I will not put my feet on while you're watching.
We'll talk to them in a later episode about the whole project behind that.
Yes. Yeah. Very enjoyable conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
As anytime they show up.
Yeah.
So as we're about to embark on this conversation about robotics, we were wondering what everyone's favorite robot might be. And then we discovered Andy Kaufman made a movie called Heartbeeps,
Which has to probably be one of the worst movies ever since another movie was scrapped because that one was so bad.
Did we get a Rotten Tomatoes score on this?
That's a good question. So it's from 1981, and it was so bad, so well received or so poorly received that they scrapped Andy Kaufman's movie about Tony Clifton.
Oh, he lost his movie deal.
Yeah.
Man, can you imagine? That article Danny wrote was so bad. You can't write another one for a year.
I've been told that before, but somehow I escaped those confines. So can you give me a rundown on what exact? Wow, that's a 1-star rating.
It almost doesn't exist.
Oh my goodness!
So can you give me a summary on the movie?
While at a repair factory, Val, played by Andy Kaufman, a robot valet. I can't even rush through this right now. Meets Aqua, played by Bernadette Peters, a fellow automaton. Automaton.
Automaton.
Yeah, I don't know why that word looks so weird. Who functions as a party hostess.
Hey now.
Already bad.
They discover that they're in love with each other and flee from their duties. They look to establish a home. Val and Aqua create their own mechanized child.
Whoa. You think that's what destroyed the movie?
Yeah, but their happiness is short-lived since the relentless enforcer robot has been programmed to apprehend them.
Yikes.
So
this looked so good on the script.
It's kind of like a Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, is it? Who is the relentless enforcer robot?
I don't know.
We don't have a.
I'm guessing it's Randy Quaid.
No, really?
Maybe that tracks.
Explains a lot.
I think that led to the demise of this film.
Yes.
Right there.
Christopher Guest was also in the movie.
Yeah,
he's great.
Like you said, star-studded.
So none of us had heard of this, so I'm not going to pretend like Mr. Heartbeep Val was one of the favorite robots of anyone in this room.
What really caught our eye was just
Val doesn't make the cut.
The
However,
costume.
K2SO from Rogue One does make the cut. That is my favorite movie.
Warm
robot.
and fuzzy feeling.
Yes, even though he was very tall and
I will add just having spoken with colleague Tim Heston, who said his favorite robot was Robot from Lost in Space because they both have a tendency to flail their arms around when there's danger. So that made me laugh.
Tim does this?
Tim did indicate that he may exhibit that
Tendency?
Yes. I agree. While I do not flail my arms, I also like Robot from Lost in Space because who doesn't want a robot buddy to get you out of trouble?
That's
Yeah.
right. Danger. Dan
Yeah.
Davis.
You'd mentioned your favorite sexy robot, Gareth.
I'm not getting into that. I think you did.
We can't
what's her
talk
name?
about
from
that.
Jetsons?
Yeah.
Rosie from the Jetsons.
We can't
Yeah.
talk about that on the air.
Seriously, the entire package.
Literally. And
Well,
Yeah. So
Great.
with all this, I think we should go into a more serious discussion about robotics in manufacturing, specifically metal fabricating, and enjoy.
Navigate your leadership journey at the FMA annual meeting, February 27th to the 29th in Clearwater, Florida. At this premier event, you'll connect with top leaders in the fabrication industry to share ideas, collaborate to solve business challenges, and build strategic relationships. Chart your course for success in 2024 and beyond at the FMA annual meeting. Find all the details at fmamfg.org. And now, back to the episode.
Today we're talking with Aaron. Aaron, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Aaron's with ASTM. It's acronyms.
Yep.
I have trouble with ASTM International. Can you give us an idea, Aaron, your role there at ASTM and maybe what ASTM's involvement with the metal fabricating industry is?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the director of robotics and autonomous system programs at ASTM. And so I oversee the standards making, workforce development issues and training, and even some R&D and market analysis. So I sort of look at a bunch of different things when it comes to robotics and automation. And so when we look at the metal fabrication industry, we're not a big player. Our friends over at the American Welding Society are very much the big standards group for this industry, but that's not to say we're not involved.
Right.
Being a 125-year-old organization, we're in a lot of different industries, and sometimes it's only in small ways, but sometimes it's in big ways as well.
Right.
yeah.
Your involvement with automation and robotics makes a lot of sense, particularly here at this year's and a couple years previous FabTechs as well. There's a lot of automation out there now.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, ASTM's involvement, I mean, it would be timely. Do you think it's at the right time, or is the industry kind of gotten out a little bit ahead and ASTM's trying to make up for lost ground?
Well, I mean, to be honest, with all us standards development organizations, SDOs as we call ourselves, we're always behind.
Okay.
We are always behind because,
How do you mean?
well, I mean, technology is always going to move faster. It is always going to move faster, and
Yes.
we're just not always going to know what's happening right away.
Sure.
Now, that being said, we are trying our best to be faster.
Right.
And we are trying to put mechanisms into our processes of how we even create a standard so it can get to market faster. And we are starting to see that. We are starting to average from the moment a organization, a group of people, or whoever brings us a problem that they say we need to create a standard around, taking that to a ASTM committee to be listened to, assigned, and then put into a working item process, and then to standards publication. We're getting it down to almost a year.
Okay.
I mean, it is speeding up. We actually are going to probably publish some standards this year that only took 6 months.
Wow.
And it's just because we have dedicated experts who are volunteering their time to help bring these standards to market.
Right.
And that's the big win. And when industry and standards organizations work together, it goes faster.
Right.
Right.
So
Awesome.
Well, you were saying before that, you've got a lot of you've got a lot of need for people to come to you
yes.
with issues that they're encountering in the shop or the factory. I found that fascinating. Can you tell me a little bit more about your need for input from the field
Yeah.
in order to do your job better?
Yeah. I mean, prior to joining ASTM, I actually worked for FedEx.
Yeah.
For over 25 years, where I led the R&D and testing work before a piece of automation or a robot would go out into our operations.
Yeah.
So I started getting exposed to standards really early on.
Yeah.
And I would go to the meetings and I would contribute and I would talk about what is FedEx's needs in all this. And it was always great because there'd be other companies in the room and they would be bringing their issues, but there was one drawback. And I think this is very important for this audience is it was the bigger players. It was the Fortune 500 companies. It was the government agencies. It was the regulatories. Not many small and medium guys were in the room. And that's one thing I want to change. And that's why I like coming to these shows to listen to the small and medium guys of what are their pain points.
Yeah.
What are the things that they need fixed, but they just don't have time to, or the resources to work on standards directly like FedEx and GM and all of those other companies. But if they tell us what they're looking for, they have advocates, and I'm one of them. I will advocate for a small and medium enterprise who says this is a gap in the standards framework that we need addressed, and I will do that.
Wow.
Yeah. Can you describe to us the type of standards that ASTM is kind of looking at right now or have recently released?
I mean, we were very focused on test and performance of if you, let's just take a mobile robot, because we've done a lot of work in mobile robots initially, of just, can your mobile robot navigate a defined area, not run into the walls? If we put obstacles in its way, a chair, a ladder, will it detect those and avoid those? So that's one kind of test that we provide. And then the whole thing is for a manufacturer, that's probably something you want to know before you buy a robot that's going to be moving through your factory, of can it actually detect certain things? Can it detect that pallet that someone just put on the floor? Or is it going to run it over just because it can't see it? That's by having that test, we can tell with confidence that robot will avoid that.
Right.
And so don't worry about that as a risk, because we've already proven in the lab that robot can do that.
I like you, before we went on the air, you kind of made the point of just what the acronym stands for.
Yeah.
The American
Society for Testing and Material.
So that's what the organization does.
That is what we do.
Yeah. So if somebody were to buy, say, a mobile robot, if they say, is this thing ASTM qualified, certified, what would be the phrase? There's
not really many of those. If anything, we're more tied into a larger standard. So a lot of folks will be told about ISO 10218 or R15.06.
Okay.
And our tests very much support those.
I got you.
So the whole thing is if your robot goes through one of our tests, more than likely it's now in compliance with a bigger safety standard that OSHA or another regulatory agency wants you to be in compliance.
Gotcha.
So by passing this test, you might have already checked a box on a bigger standard, and that means OSHA is going to be like, yep, you did your work.
So you're helping the OEMs verify that their machinery is safe and going to be safe to work around.
That is correct.
Gotcha. You've had a chance to walk around. I assume you've seen a lot of cobots.
Oh, yes.
Anything strike your, strikes your interest as you see all those cobots?
I mean, cobots are really a fascinating technology. When I was at FedEx, we would have them in our labs so we could prove some concepts. If we were doing like package testing of, we pick up this package type? Can we pick up this package type? We would use a cobot in our lab so we could test that, because we were working closely to the robot. The issue is you go to a FedEx operation today, you're not going to see cobots in our operations. You're going to see the high industrial, high speed robots, because that's the speed we needed.
Right.
And those are in applications where the people aren't around. And I think that's my biggest concern with cobots is if you are doing metal work and it's not a collaborative application because of what your unique situation is, do you really need a cobot? Or are you wasting money on all those additional safety features for a collaborative application that you're just not going to use?
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the biggest thing I worry about, especially for small and medium guys, because they're on a budget. Money's tight. They got to prove a good ROI. Don't waste an extra $20,000-$30,000 on a robotic arm if you're not going to use the collaborative features of it.
Yeah.
Sure.
I will say that I think there's some companies out there that I don't say question, but are probably concerned of how a lot of these shops have put cobots in
Yes.
without really fully thinking about their impact around those that work around them.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, I've been in too many factories and shops where there's a cobot and there's a cage around it, and I'm like, oh my god, why do you have your UR caged? And they're like, well, it's picking up a sharp piece of metal, and as it's moving it across to this area to put it down, if someone walks past it, that sharp piece of metal is going to cut them.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to put a cage around it, and I'm like, this is something you should have thought through in your setups.
It's awfully hard to make it collaborative if it's sitting behind bars.
Yeah.
Or mesh.
So it's just do your risk assessment. Go really walk through and then select the right robot for your use case.
Yeah.
That leads me to ask, what's the litmus test? So what are some questions people should ask themselves when it comes to deciding what kind of automation to incorporate into their production line?
Yeah, I mean, this is where you really should work with an integrator. And especially an integrator that's in your industry is the best. Now, not everyone's going to have that option, but really you should have that walkthrough with your integrator of this is what I'm trying to solve.
Right.
This is what I think I need, but I also have budgetary concerns.
Right.
Have that honest conversation.
Yeah.
And yes, it's hard sometimes to admit like, hey, I only have an X amount of money for this, even though that doesn't sound good. You think you might want this, but you're not sure. There are no wrong answers.
Right.
Okay. And great integrators, this is the value. This is the real value because they'll make sure you get a great start from the get-go.
Right.
And they match the right technology to the right.
That's the
use case.
customization that they offer. So as you're watching cobots and automation advance forward at such an amazing clip, what are some things that you're seeing that people ought to be coming to you for? And you're talking, right, the problems that you're hoping that people will tell you about.
Yeah.
What are some things that you can help with?
Right now, one of the reasons I'm at FabTech is because I want to hear some of these because I'm still trying to find out what are some of the challenges when it comes to this kind of thing. We recently launched a whole grasping group because there's been incidences where people bought in-defector graspings that can crush a human hand and they put it into a collaborative application.
Ooh.
So the whole thing is now you've added risk to your application without knowing it because you just over-selected an in-defector. Right. And so we're doing some testing around that so we can actually provide some of that finger strength data back to so customers can make a better selection of what type of in-defector they want. We just fired up a thing with the legged robots because we're starting to see all these humanoid robots come. And I know this isn't for really this group, but they're like, we're not going to get past regulators if we can't prove our humanoid robots don't fall over on people. Right. So we are starting to work on some tests for that. So within the metal forming industry, the fabrication industry, if people have questions or they have an issue of, do we need to have a standard around this process? Right. Bring it to one of us SDOs, and we will definitely talk about it, and we'll figure out, is there a solution already out there that we're not publicizing, or do we need to fire up a team of experts to really maybe build a standard around this problem to solve everybody's problem? And that's what we ultimately want to do, is solve as many people's problems as possible through this work.
So it's funny you say that in-defector is, I've been at this with this particular magazine for 20 years, never come up in a conversation. Yeah. So it makes total sense. Yeah. But was this something that people, in-defector manufacturers, approached you with, or did the organization see like a headline and say like we need to get involved?
Well, there's been some headlines. There was the Russian child incident at a chess match where it was just a robot that just picked up chess pieces and placed. Right. And now the people were supposed to keep their hand away from the robot while they were picking their pieces and moving them. But this child put their hand on a chess piece that the robot was going for. The robot, just doing its job, thought it was grasping the chess piece, but it grasped the child's finger and crushed it.
Oh, wow.
Hey.
And then when that story came out, we started getting stories from factories of, well, that happened to Joe.
Well, isn't that funny?
Really?
And it's like, okay, we have a problem, guys.
That's not the kind of pipeline you want.
Yeah.
You want it to be proactive.
We want it proactive. Exactly.
Yeah.
So the whole thing is I highly recommend folks, if they're starting to see an issue and they heard it from somebody else that they're having the same issue, both of you should call one
How
of
do they
us.
get a hold of you? We'll repeat it at the end. But how do they get a hold of you?
ASTM.org is our website. There are links all over there that connect with any of us. So even if you just don't know who to connect with, there is a info at ASTM, and they will send it to the right party within our organization.
So this is a little, I don't know if it comes across as silly or not, but is it kind of like a large organization where there are laboratories where tests are done and there's not scientists, I don't know what the appropriate researchers hired to do some of this stuff?
We're sort of a mixed bag. We are an international organization. That's why we added international to our name, even though Americans at the beginning. Yeah. We have offices across the globe. We just recently opened our new headquarters in Asia and Singapore.
Oh, wow.
And we're about to open some more offices in other countries. Mm-hmm. Some of our testing is internal, but we work with numerous other labs that have that capability, and we'll contract out that work with them, and we'll work with them. Most of all those labs actually have helped develop some of the standards themselves through their own research. And I mean, that's one of our strengths is we have a very strong pipeline of research to standards, where we will run things through numerous paces with researchers, independent labs, and make sure we are actually developing a standard that is repeatable and works for everybody. Yeah. And it's a tall order sometimes, but we get it done. Yeah. And it's a group effort. I think the last time I checked, ASTM has access to over 30,000 experts in you name it. Right. For robotics, we have about 130 dedicated experts representing 12 countries that they are our go-to people, and they are writing and working on standards all the time for us.
Has that expanded in recent years just to reflect the increased adoption of robotics?
When I joined ASTM, the group was about 50 experts.
Wow.
And as we've expanded the scope of our reach into robotics and autonomous systems, we've added more experts. Yeah. And I will continue to add experts as we continue to add. And that's another part of my job, is really to sort of seek out who are these brains that are out there that I can tap into. Yeah. And it runs the gamut. I have everyone from MIT, Princeton, Oxford on our groups, all the way over to IBM and Disney, all the way down to a couple mom and pop shops that dedicate they will, I can send them something to test. Yeah. And it might take them a little longer than the big guys, but they'll do it because they want to see it successful too.
Right.
So do you come across a level of sophistication at that level?
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah. And that's another part of just some of the challenges of my job is sometimes it's like, do I need that MIT professor, or do I need the guy on the ground who really knows how the stuff's going to go down? Right. And quite frankly, I lean more towards that latter guy because they know what's going on.
Well, they've already made the mistake. Yeah. They've already seen the how to do it wrong. Yes. Hopefully they haven't lost a finger in the process.
But only in Indiana and Oklahoma. I don't know.
I'm curious of going back to your experience at FedEx and kind of geeking out in your lab. Like, what are some ways of finding out problems that you discovered there? I mean,
I think one that will probably be interesting for your audience, because I've actually seen some of the technology around here, is RFID.
Okay.
Of using RFID tags to identify a part as it's coming up the line to then tell the automation.
Sure.
FedEx was working on RFID way before that, because think about RFID on every package. You don't got to scan anything anymore.
Right.
But the issue with RFID is it doesn't go through certain metals. Right. And water actually will mess up its signal. And before I left, I had one of the largest RFID testing arrays on the planet. I mean, it was over 100,000 square feet of RFID arrays. And I had every material in there. And RFID is really good until it's not.
Right.
And in a factory setting, I think there's a lot of applications, especially if you're doing certain parts and a part comes up, the RFID said, hey, for this part, I only need this done. And that's all the robots do. The next part comes up and says, oh, I need this added on. And it does that. That is going to be a game changer for customized manufacturing.
Interesting.
But the issue for logistics is metal, water. As a package moves through a system, it's going to encounter a bunch of different things like that.
It's like aluminum.
Aluminum is the worst.
Yeah, I mean, I got a transponder in the mail the other day from the state of Illinois.
Yeah,
so I live in Wisconsin, and it was wrapped in aluminum foil.
Yep.
To keep, I don't know, signals out. Keep keep it from getting messed up.
Yeah, and the other thing that was big about RFD, especially for FedEx or a UPS or a DHL, is if you have millions of those in one area, because that's where all the packages are, how do you filter out the noise of not just all the packages, but something like what you just described, being inside, not being wrapped in aluminum?
Right.
Because you're going to get that signal as well. So you got to filter that out.
Wow, big challenge.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that big UPS hub near 294 in Chicago.
Yeah. You should drive by it one day with an RFID reader and just, it'll go crazy.
Cheap entertainment.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's really fascinating, because as even smaller shops are looking for ways to automate, make things faster, all the way up to the really big boys. I mean, these kind of things will get in the way if they don't use them properly.
Yeah.
And that's where you guys come in. Right?
Yeah. I mean, if anything, I welcome some of the small and medium shops. Just call us if you have a question.
Sure.
I mean, it might take a while to get to us as we're working on some other things, but I love just tell me your problems. Yeah. And let's see what we can do for you. I have pointed so many companies even onto ISO or ANSI or AWS, because that's who has their solution they're looking for. ASTM has a system called Compass, where we have nearly all the big other standards groups standards on there, and you can purchase them through Compass. Everyone gets their cut of money, but it's a one-stop shop. Yeah. But if you just have a question like, I don't even know where to start, call us.
Sure.
We will walk you through, and if you don't pay ASTM $1, so be it. I don't care. I want to solve your problems. And that's what we are a nonprofit, okay? Yeah. But we do make money in numerous areas to keep us funded. So don't think calling us is going to turn into a massive bill. It's not.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, we can work on some things to make it a bill. Yeah. But the whole thing is if you just have a general question like, Aaron, where do I start? Feel free to reach out to me. I will try my best to get you an answer.
Okay. So as you walk the floor here, are there other things that make you realize ASTM maybe needs to be involved with? Or are there certain things already in the works that coincide with what's being shared out there at the FabTech floor?
There's a couple things. I think we have to be, as a fellow SDO, AWS, they are very much the lead group. And so the first thing is if they're working on something already, we're not going to get in the way. Yeah. If anything, we're going to ask, how do we help you? How do we support you? What do you need from us? And if they don't need anything from us, that's fine. But we let the initial ones always take the lead. But I am getting intrigued by some of the technologies that are going to be more than maybe U.S. centric or North America centric, of how do we help to ensure we have where some of these OEMs can sell their products anywhere on the planet. And I think that's going to be might be the next thing we have to look at. I can't put my finger on an exact one. Right. But that's as we talked about, the technology is growing so fast.
Yes.
And some of these startups, I mean, think about it. 2-3 years ago, Path Robotics was this little startup, and now they're this monster.
It's big group, big booth.
And the good thing is a lot of their technologies are already in very established standards paths. So them going global is not going to be hard. But what about the next guy? And that's as we start getting into more technologies. Are there certain things that an ASTM or an ISO needs to step up to ensure that OEM can sell their product everywhere because it's standardized?
Okay. Yeah.
For the most part, do you feel like the robotics and automation folks kind of have a general knowledge and respect to make sure their new product introductions, new ideas get filtered through those channels?
They're doing a very good job, and the good thing is every robotic arm from Fanuc to Yaskawa to UR are all involved in these. Yeah. the newer guys that are coming to market are starting to see that, as I talked about the humanoid robots,
Right.
that seem to be popping up left and right.
Yeah.
They reached out to us like right away saying, hey,
Wow.
we need help.
Yeah.
Right.
Because they saw this ain't going to get anywhere unless they can refer back to a standard. And because humanoid robotics are so new when you really talk about real world applications,
Right.
no one was working on those. And so we have definitely jumped in there. And we have the support of the other SDOs. Some SDOs are actually working on other components in that area. So we are actually trying to speed up. We don't want to wait like 5-10 years of, oh, now you need us.
Right.
No, let's
Right.
be proactive. Let's get going now
Right.
Yeah.
before it becomes a problem.
Well, you mentioned the humanoid robots. I mean, it's not going to be 5 years, but
No.
I mean, it was only 3 or 4 years ago when the cobots started making their debut, and now they're everywhere on the
Yep.
welding
Now,
side,
people-
also kind of on the fab side.
Yeah. You can't go anywhere in this show floor without seeing somebody touting it as their major thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said with your background from FedEx, kind of looking at these different industries you get involved with, as you walk the floor at FabTech, do you see something that may be applicable in those other industries that
Oh, yeah.
maybe makes sense here that you don't really see on
Absolutely.
the show floor? What are some of those?
I mean, when mobile robots were starting to be explored by logistics companies like FedEx and DHL and others, you know where we went first to look for who's already doing mobile robots? It was
NASA?
agriculture.
Oh, ag.
So
Oh.
a lot of the initial work was done through some of the ag platforms. We reached out to a bunch of ag schools at FedEx, at Mississippi State, Kansas State, of like, what are you guys working on when it comes to mobiles in ag? Because it might have applications here.
Like mobile reapers and things
Yeah.
like that? Or
I mean, just how do they generally move through the field? How
Yeah.
do they not run into things? Do they
Right.
have to run into certain things? I mean,
Yeah.
those were some questions, and it matured. As I look through these, the first thing that comes to mind is, how far is welding away from packaging? Because you're welding and cutting to a specific thing and all that.
right.
In logistics, you want to make your boxes, you don't want, how many of us have had that Amazon box show up that's this big and you
Yes.
open it up and there's one little tiny
Right.
thing
Right,
there.
right.
And Amazon is doing a great job. They have some amazing technologies that they're working on packaging to right size that. And some of those robots that are doing that are just freaking amazing. And so I see similarities between those Amazon robots that are right sizing the packaging to the welding and cutting robots that are out here.
That are automatically
Yeah.
identifying parameters and adjusting themselves. Yeah.
So I'm wondering, how far could some of these OEMs pivot their product and offer a packaging service to a smaller logistics firm that's not Amazon, that doesn't have their entire own robotics group?
So you see a direct one-to-one connection potentially.
Yeah, I mean, how different is it to make a custom metal part that fits in a very specific thing, different from making a very specific package type to go in a very specific thing?
That's a very good point.
Never say never. I mean,
Yeah.
many of them have a lot of experience with packaging if they're doing really custom projects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have to protect this as it's being shipped and it's valued at X amount of dollars. And then, the yin to that yang is probably the larger fabricators that are working with an OEM that require like reusable shipping containers.
Yeah.
I mean, they get pulled into it sometimes whether they want to or not. So
Yeah.
they-
There's some amazing things. I mean, one of the things I'm looking at right now is, where does robotics and automation fit into the manufacturing of hypersonic and space components?
yeah.
Because hypersonic and space components is going to be a big industry going forward. And when you have NASA asking those questions, like, how are we going to do robots and automation to really mass produce these types of parts to go up into space?
Somebody in this floor could probably lend a
Oh,
solution.
yeah. And I've already talked to a couple folks in this, and some of the feedback I've gotten is like, we need help.
Yeah.
I mean, there was one gentleman whose team is working on parts that go into satellites. And they're like, there is no criteria to tell us what to build to before
Wow.
we send this, and we know it's going into space.
Wow.
Wow.
So going back to what we initially do is, ASTM has a whole market research team. And so we're leveraging that group and myself to start asking these questions about, well, what's this going to look like, guys?
Right.
How will this? And talking to some of these folks on the floor today, a lot of them are saying there is a problem, but there is a solution.
Yeah.
And it's collecting those. Yeah. So again, exactly what we've been talking about.
Right. They need to talk to you.
Talk to us.
Yeah.
Tell us.
Call you. Well, and again, how can they best get a hold of you?
Yeah. I mean, I'm on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not hard to find. LinkedIn's sort of likes putting me at the top of the page.
Okay.
So I do my best to respond to messages as quickly as I can.
Yeah.
I get a lot of them. Email. I'm pretty sure you guys will share my email address.
Yes.
It is just aprather@astm.org.
Yeah.
Feel free to contact me there. And again, I will do my best to do it timely and quickly as possible. And if I do need to hand you off to somebody else that does have that answer, I will do that so you can get that answer.
Yeah.
Very good.
Before we go, I wanted to ask you about, you'd mentioned before, what ASTM's involved with, and we were discussing about the cannabis industry.
Yes.
And thank goodness someone's actually gauging some of this effectiveness of what's available. But in terms, it's very important for some states that are kind of not open-minded as other states.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or on the fence.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, ASTM. I mean, we're sort of like ISO. We're in everything.
Yeah.
I mean, we run the gamut from toy standards to robot standards, where I'm at, all the way up to cannabis standards now. Yeah. And that was actually, again, the cannabis industry came to us saying, we're not going to get anywhere with the FDA or state governments unless we show that we know what we're doing through standardization, through test methodologies that have been proven and backed up.
Right.
And that actually happened right before the pandemic. We actually worked on those during the pandemic. I think we're up to almost about 14 published standards, and I know that they got more in the pipeline that they're working with. But it has actually helped convince certain states,
right,
namely Mississippi, to actually pass at least recreational, medicinal marijuana usage.
Right.
But the whole thing is that just tells you the strength that a standard brings to an industry.
Right.
It shows that they know what they're doing.
To see your seal on something is sort of like seeing the UL seal or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
They know that someone's looked at it. They know that someone has actually put scientific data into motion with
Plus,
this.
it keeps the government.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of allows the industry to evolve on its own.
Yeah, I mean,
not wait.
The government, I mean, it all goes back to, I believe, a law that was passed back during the Clinton administration, where organizations like OSHA and other regulatory agencies were pretty much told of lean on the standards organizations to develop standards and keep us out of it. And then we'll reference it. But the whole thing is they can bring enforcement to a standard if the industry has already agreed to that standard.
Right.
So OSHA can cite folks for not following best practices or certain standards. And the bad side to this for our standards, just so everyone's aware of this, is the moment a standard is cited by the regulatory agencies, we have to put it out on our site for free. So we get no money on that. So this is why we do other things like market research and training and all that to keep us funded. But we have over 13,000 standards on the books from ASTM, and I believe about a little over 7,000 are enforced by somebody on this planet.
Well, and if Bill had actually inhaled, maybe all the cannabis standards would have had an easier time of getting past, right?
But I do always joke of, you can play the game of go to your Home Depot, go to the Lowe's, walk the aisles. You will find an ASTM mark on one product in each aisle.
Absolutely.
Because we are everywhere.
Yeah. Power tools are a good thing to have standards for.
Oh.
Yes.
Phenomenally important.
You got a question, Gareth?
Yeah. I know your time at FabTech's been limited because you were part of like 2 roundtables, and then we dragged you into this.
Yeah.
And you've been here just for 1 day, really?
Really?
Yeah. What's the most interesting thing you've seen on the floor, robotic-wise?
So I would say some of these big machines that are over in Hall A have just been amazing, because like, where else are you going to see those types of machines unless you go to the factory? I mean, just seeing some of these machines manhandle what looks to be at least a 20 by 20 piece of metal and folding it and drilling holes in it all at once is like, that is amazing stuff.
And you mentioned the Path Robotics too.
And Path Robotics is amazing. because I mean, if you want to see the potential future of this industry, of what they're doing with robotics and AI and machine learning
and the vision
oh my gosh. I mean, I remember when they were just a little startup,
right?
And they were publishing research papers,
right?
And now they're this. I mean, that is amazing, and it just makes you wonder who's the next one out here that is just going to take off.
Yeah, the path is something else. Where I mean, they're using that technology. They're just taking parts out based on CAD and vision, and the robot. I don't call it instinctively, but knows what to do in terms of welding.
Yeah,
it's pretty awesome.
You can see a lot of vision-based inspection, guiding a lot of welding machines and things like that. I mean, that's what's happening now is real-time adjustment based on a machine's understanding through the lens of a camera.
Oh yeah,
that is the inspection process.
Yeah, and actually, that's one area that has been brought recently to us.
Really?
Is do we need to have some standardization around inspection robots?
Yeah.
And
they're everywhere now.
They're everywhere, and I think if anything, what we probably need to do in the coming months or years is maybe just how do you do inspection robots?
Right.
So maybe not a standard, but maybe a guide. And ASTM has done that. We have done guidebooks.
Like a set of tutorials?
Yeah, they just a tutorial that goes through of this is what you want to look for.
Okay.
On the additive manufacturing side, each year we publish our Woolers report, which is a book that you probably could kill somebody with if you hit them hard enough.
Not that we would recommend that, but
a standard for guidebooks.
But it spells out everything that's happened in additive manufacture the past year.
Wow.
What are the new parts that came? Who are the new players? And each year that book just gets thicker and thicker because that's how much additive's growing.
Wow.
So our Woolers team publishes that every year, and it sells really well. And folks just trying to figure out who are those players that are out there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And one thing, you mentioned path again. Tim Heston wrote an article recently, one of our editors, about, when a welding robot has a brain. And he wrote about a lot of these services have automation as a service now because the growth of automation is so quick that a lot of companies can't keep up. Yep. Are you seeing more and more companies offer that?
Yes. So automation as a service, robots as a service. I think that's I think that's actually going to be the future business model going forward, especially for the small and medium guys. And it's just because you can control your costs. You pay a monthly fee. If the technology gets better and improves, okay, it's like your iPhone. You just switch it out. You go trade in your old iPhone for the new one. You're still paying you might pay a little bit more, but the whole thing is I think that's what we're going to. I mean, the iPhone model is probably the best way to think about this is just you upgrade your robots or your automation. Now, it will be interesting for the OEMs of how to figure out how that's going to work financially on their side.
Right.
But I think it's the best way to get a smaller, medium guy in. And even for the larger guys, one thing those services provide is you don't need a CEO or a president and maybe not even a vice president sign off. You can get a sign off because it's an expense now. It's just a monthly expense.
Right.
It's not capital.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So and they're doing that model with some of these cobots where they're the little welding table and to let you get your feet wet, whatever it may be. And the other thing going is you got a whole generation of people growing up with that, like that's second nature to them.
Oh yeah.
It's because I was laughing earlier and being a curmudgeon about it, and then I'm realizing I'm old.
Yeah.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news.
There you go. And so people are used to that.
Don't worry about that. I mean, I got shown up by a 12-year-old on a UR program. Literally, she just took the template away from me and says, "No, you do this. I'm like, oh, dang. I've been programming robots for longer than you've been alive." And you just showed me up. Good play, kid.
Yeah.
But that's where we're at. I mean,
right.
Yes.
And I'm hoping this is what helps the industry. Is I know the industry's trying to find workers.
Yeah.
If we can show kids that this is the cool technology. These are not your grandfather's factories.
No.
These are not those dirty factories shown in your history textbook.
Right.
Cobots.
I mean, I highly encourage every one of the attendees, the moment they leave here, go back and call their local schools and set up visits to their shop.
Right.
Yeah.
So kids can see what is really manufacturing now.
Yeah.
Right.
It's almost another case of searching. So it's not just manufacturing companies searching for workers, but people finding manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
It's
knowing
almost like
what's available.
the technology finding people that can run it. I mean, it's a draw that not enough people know about.
Yeah. And I will give a plug to the ARM Institute in Pittsburgh. They launched roboticscareer.org to help address that. It's a great place to start. It's free. They don't charge. So even if you just want to go and just see what's out there, what training programs are out there, that's a great place to start. And again, it's free. And the ARM Institute in Pittsburgh, who's tasked with that by the government, they launched it. And it's a great little tool.
Yeah.
And that's one thing our parent company, FMA, our foundation, Nuts, Bolts, and Thingamajigs, we run a series of manufacturing camps for kids. And most of those camps involve shops to manufacturing facilities just to see that exact thing you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that's the only way you're going to get them is kids need to see it. And when they do see it, man, their eyes get as big as everything. And I've seen kids move into manufacturing and they all cite, I actually saw this. And I was like, I want to do that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot, Aaron.
Yeah, thank you
It's
for
been
having me.
Fascinating. Thank you.
Yeah. And people want to reach you. You'd mentioned your email, aprather@astm.org.
Yep. And LinkedIn.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's great that you have an easy email to remember because this is the biggest challenge of this podcast is when I try to remember ours.
You can do it.
Podcast@fmamfg.org.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, I always have to
Congratulations.
track it in my mind when you say it too, so you got it.
It's also like the 8th time I've done this at the Fab Tech. So, all right. Repetition does help.
Yeah.
Please rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Tell a friend. And anything else?
I think that's good.
All right. That's good. Thanks a lot for joining us. Until next time.
Thank
Bye.
you.
The Fabricator Podcast is a production of Fabricators and Manufacturers Association, located in Elgin, Illinois. The show is hosted by Dan Davis and the staff of FMA Communications. The podcast is produced by Gareth Slager and recorded and edited with the help of Brandon Geyer. Sales support provided by Andy Flando. Additional production support by Elizabeth Gavin, Dana Weicker, Mary Diamond, Mike Owens, and me, Sarah Spring. Thank you for listening.